Joe Kissell takes control of Tahoe and Mac Basics. This is MacVoices. Today's MacVoices is supported by TV Plus Talk, our MacVoices series with Charlotte Henry focused on Apple TV Plus. From shows and other content to the business side of things, there's always something to learn about Apple's streaming service. Find it in the categories listings on the MacVoices website, or go directly to macvoices.com/category/TV-talk. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, we're all struggling through or enjoying, or maybe both at the same time, Apple's new operating system, Tahoe, and that's one of the reasons that we definitely wanted to get Joe Kissell back on to talk about his new book, Take Control of Tahoe, along with his sort of related book, Joe, Mac Basics. So, Joe Kissell, it's great to have you. Thanks for being here.
Hi, thanks as always for inviting me.
I love the big sigh. Yes, here we go again.
Well, it is that, right? It is because before we started recording, you and I were chatting about the various sorts of stresses in our lives. For me, a large chunk of those stresses are a million take control books that have to be written or updated. And every one of those, it's like, Apple, why did you do this? Why? And so when I'm like, it's not like, hey, excited about a new book. I'm excited about the new books, but also like, Apple, did you really have to make me do this? And it's not all the changes are pleasant and joyful and life-giving and like that. So yeah, we got a lot to talk about.
So do we want to start with Tahoe, or do you want to talk about the Mac Basics book, or do you want to try to mash it together? I'll let you tell me, because again, we talk pre-show and I understand the dynamics, but I'll let you explain them.
We're going to be talking about Tahoe because of all the changes in Tahoe. Of course, the new stuff in Tahoe is what Take Control of Tahoe is all about. It's all the details of all the new stuff, quite a lot, as well as how to upgrade from older systems. This is sort of how we do operating system books every year. So it's very much like the previous ones, only now it talks about all the Tahoe stuff. Meanwhile, I had this book, Mac Basics, which we just came out earlier this year. And when I wrote the book, I was thinking, this is going to be great because I'm going to write it once and it will barely need any updates at all from year to year. It'll be mostly an evergreen book. When some new feature is added, I'll mention it, just a little adjustment here, a little addition there. But what's really going to change in the Finder? Folders are still going to look the same way, and you still are going to use Control Center the same way, and notifications are going to work the same way, and all these screenshots that I took, they're basically going to look the same. And then Liquid Glass came along, and I looked at the Mac Basics book, and I'm like, Really? Now all of those screenshots are wrong, and a lot of my instructions are wrong. And yeah, some new apps, so we'll talk about those. But this book that I thought was going to need only minor tweaks from year to year turns out to have needed a really, really big overhaul. So I did that, and I replaced almost all of the images in the book. And I borrowed a lot of the information from the Tahoe book to retrofit into the Mac Basics book. In the Tahoe book that we're going to spend most of our time talking about, this is detailed discussions of every new thing that I could find in Tahoe. So there's a lot of information there. The Mac Basics book is a much shorter, briefer, simpler discussion of most of those new things. So Mac Basics is not how to do everything that your Mac can do in great detail. It's the basics. So I've had to change everything about that book to reflect Tahoe. And what I decided to do was to say, all right, this second edition of this book is only about Tahoe. My previous edition, which went back a few versions, if you buy the new version of the book, you can download the old one for free. So you can still get, like if you have a Mac running the new thing and a Mac running the old thing, that's fine. You can still see both versions of it. But it was just going to be too complicated to say, well, if you're using Sonoma, do it this way. If you're using Sequoia, do it this way. If you're using Tahoe, do it this other way. It was way, way, way too complicated to write and to read. So we kind of did that split. If you want to know all the new things in Tahoe, then you get Take Control of Tahoe. If you want to know about all the things your Mac can do that aren't restricted to just the new things in Tahoe, but not in great detail, then you get Mac Basics. There are a lot of things in Mac Basics that I don't even mention at all because they're not basic. Some of those things show up and Take Control of Tahoe. We're trying to make a split between the detail for people who are already accustomed to the previous thing and the overview for people who need to get their footing. So that's basically the split. So what we're going to talk about today is the new stuff in Tahoe that is covered in detail and Take Control of Tahoe and mentioned in a shorter way in Mac Basics second edition.
Okay, I think it's interesting to listen to how you approach this, because most of us would look at it and say, Mac Basics, okay, it's a basics book. You're right, it's going to be basic. And you don't realize that every once in a while, Apple throws you this curveball with such a major change to the interface. So, I get it, and I applaud you for your diligence in trying to keep as many things and to keep a cohesive relationship between the Mac Basics book and all the others. So I'm going to tread into dangerous ground here for a second because I do not want to take us off track. But let's be clear. Does the Tahoe book cover just the operating system, or did you try to tackle some of the individual programs that Apple has inside Tahoe as the standard, the standard things that come with the OS? Because I know that a lot of Take Control books out there focus on a lot of those separate programs. So, I mean, how did you address that?
Oh, absolutely. From my point of view, anything on your Mac that has appeared for the first time in Tahoe or that has changed significantly in Tahoe needs to be covered in the Tahoe book. So, of course, I talk about the operating system globally and some system-wide features, the stuff with Control Center and the stuff with Spotlight and so on and so forth. But also there are new apps in Tahoe. Some of them are brought over from iPhones and iPads. And for example, Magnifier, not a big deal, but that app was on your mobile devices before. Now it's on your Mac too. Things like the phone app have more features now. Things like the Apps app, which we'll talk about, the Journal app, which was previously only mobile, now that's on Mac too, the Games app, and so of course anything that appears in Tahoe for the first time, we're absolutely going to cover.
Okay, all right. But so something like, let's say, one of your favorite programs, I know, Mail or Reminders or anything, do they get treated at all in the Tahoe book, or are they being saved for later?
So what I do, good question, a good example. What I do with apps that are not new but have some new features is I mention the new features. I might spend a paragraph on it or a page or a couple of pages however much is needed to talk about what the new thing is in the app. So I have an overview of what's new in FaceTime, Image Playground, Messages, Music, Notes, Passwords, Photos, Reminders, Safari, Shortcuts, probably some other ones that are in different parts of the book that I'm not looking at this moment. But then, I can't possibly tell you everything there is to know about the Reminders app in my Tahoe book, because that's the job of Glenn Fleischman's Take Control of Calendar and Reminders, and his Take Control of Notes book, both of which are also being updated, and his Jason Snell's Take Control of Photos, and Glenn's Take Control of FaceTime and Messages, and so forth. Kirk McElhearn's Take Control of Apple Media Apps. So for apps that just have new features, I give you an overview of what the new features are. Oh, you can go here and click this thing, and this happens now. But if you want to learn all about that app, not just about the new features, and if you want to learn about the new features in a lot more detail, then allow me to refer you to one of our other books.
Got it. Okay. I wanted to lay that groundwork so that we don't veer off and then ramble on something that really isn't pertinent. So
it's good that you brought that up, though, because I often feel as I'm writing my books, and this was more true in Mac Basics than in any other book that I've written, I often feel like I have so many references to other books that the book you're reading almost feels like a commercial. Like, yes, you just paid $15 for this book on this topic, but I'm not going to tell you all about this for this thing. Go buy this other $15 book. But the thing is, if you take all of our books together, that's something like 5,000 plus pages. You can't put everything in a single book. It's not possible. So the only way for us to maintain sanity and have any hope of keeping things updated is to split them into somewhat manageable chunks. So we do our best. Like, we're not trying to fool you here. We're not trying to say, well, this is a book about Tahoe, so of course it's going to tell you every detail about every single thing in Tahoe. We can't do that. That would be a 5,000 page book. But we are going to tell you the main things, and we're going to say, if you want to know more about this, go someplace else. So that does happen a lot. And that's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah, well, back when we started doing these discussions of take control of the new version of the OS, which was longer than either one of us want to admit, there were a limited number of those specialized apps that Apple provided, and they had limited functionality. And now we're this many years later, each one of those apps has grown into something that borders on or rivals commercial offerings. And so
oh yeah,
that's just the way it is. So you need a dedicated book for reminders, for calendars, if you're going to get everything out of it. Or, to your point, you would buy a 5,000 page book, and who wants to buy a 5,000 page book?
Yeah.
So where do we start with iOS 26 Tahoe? Do we want to talk about appearances? Do you want to talk about function? Again, I'll let you guide the ship because you have navigated the waters.
I think we have to start with the translucent elephant in the room, which is liquid glass. Boy, do I have opinions. Boy, I really have opinions about liquid glass. So this was announced back in June at WWDC across Apple's operating systems. Vision OS, iPad OS, Watch OS, all of them. There's this new interface where the motif is we're going to imagine that you're always looking through this kind of slab of glass, and it's sort of, I guess, beveled or curved on the edges so that you have a little bit of a magnifying effect on the edges, and sometimes the glass is a little bit frosted, and sometimes it's completely transparent. But all the point of all these transparent or translucent or frosted or otherwise glass distorting kind of things is to look cool. It's really that. It's really for Apple to show up and saying, look at all this incredible graphics processing we can do in real time to make it appear as though you're looking through glass. The function of liquid glass is to look cool. Some people will disagree with the cool part, but whether you agree or not that it looks cool, that's the function. Now, Apple says we want to get distractions out of your way so that you can focus on what's most important to you. In fact, in my judgment, liquid glass does exactly the opposite of that, because these controls now take up more space and they let you see the stuff behind them as though that's important and useful to you. But the stuff behind them is now blurry. And the contrast is a lot lower. So liquid glass makes it harder for you to read the control itself, the thing that you are looking at or working on. And it also blurs the stuff behind it, which is often text. And sometimes the colors bleed in a way that makes it really hard to read. So it's really kind of terrible from an accessibility or a usability point of view. It does look interesting, it does look cool, but it doesn't help me. It doesn't make my life better. It doesn't make the things that I'm doing on my devices easier or quicker or more productive. I am of a certain age. Normally, when I'd be standing here in front of my Mac, I'd have my reading glasses on because things up closer are kind of hard to see these days. So it was already hard for me to see small items on my screen. Now it's harder. And I don't really, for me, if I open a window, I want to see what's in that window. If I open a dialogue, I want to see what's in that dialogue. If I'm looking at my menu, I want to see what's on the menu. I don't want to have to squint and say, okay, I can't quite make that. What is that? So one of the first things I did was figure out how to turn off or tone down a lot of these liquid glass effects, because I got to get my work done. It's not helpful to me to be able to see what's behind the window I'm looking at. I want to see what's in the window that I'm looking at. So personally, like when I look at the liquid glass interface in iOS 6 on my iPhone, I'm like, that actually does look kind of nice. I kind of dig it on my iPhone. It's not bad. There are some spots where it's not great, but mostly on my iPhone it's pretty good. And on my iPad, also not bad. In fact, I really, really like the new windowing features on the iPad. That's great. But you take those same metaphors and you put them on a Mac, and all of a sudden, for me, it just falls apart. So I spend a lot of time talking about what liquid glass means and looks like and how you now interact with your Mac. And I do spend a couple of pages talking about, now, if this annoys you as much as it annoys me, or if you just really like to taste what it could look like if you just wanted to get your stuff done and didn't care what it looked like to the person looking over your shoulder at Starbucks, then why don't you flip this switch and why don't you adjust that slider, and you'll be so much happier. So that I want to just kind of get that out of the way first. Liquid glass, in my estimation, is not so much of a functional feature as an appearance thing, but you're going to have to deal with it one way or another.
Okay. My experience so far has been limited with it. I too am kind of struggling to find the advantages. Once in a while, there's an advantage that I can see kind of behind. So in the traditional Mac interface, a window is a window is a window, and it overlaps, and you can't see what's going on behind it. And so once in a while, there's a situation where it's like, where did that window go? Oh, over there it is. It's behind that other one. But I have to go look for it. So, and maybe I'm just trying to sell it to myself a little bit. But I think it's going to be like everything else. It's going to be an acquired taste. Maybe in a year we will say it was fine, it was great, I've gotten used to it. Right now it's different, and we all know how we react to different things, especially in something we interact with as intimately as we do with the macOS.
For sure. And I am very well aware of this concept. We encounter this with our books all the time. With our website, we make one little change and everybody's like, but it's not the same as the way it always was. We go, okay, we put a thing in a different place. Okay, like change is all right. There's going to be a reason for any change we make. We've been talking for a long time about changing the interior layout using a different font, different spacing, stuff like that. And I want to do that because I think it'll make our books look more attractive and be more readable. But I guarantee that you make the slightest little change. Well, this particular font is going to be 1 point smaller, or this heading thing is going to be narrow, or whatever the thing is we do. People are going to be up in arms and say, but it's not the thing that I'm used to. And like, give it a chance. So I really get that. I do try to give the new way a chance. And sometimes over time, I eventually get it. I'm like, I like this a little bit better. This does work for me in a way that it didn't initially. Other times it doesn't.
Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices, or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.